it off. And yeah, if we can also keep mics turned off if you're not speaking, just to stop with the background noise, that would be great. Make a start. So yeah, thank you for joining us this evening. The workshop is around the grass pitch maintenance programme, just a bit of a support one really. We've got a couple of things to kind of go through, one being a reminder of the criteria, timelines and how to claim the funding. There's been a fair bit of change around on IT and things like that, so we're just going to do a little bit of a recap on that, and then Julian's just going to talk us through some slides around improving the pitch quality and some practical steps that you guys can do to move from poor to good. And then the last bit of the workshop is just around sustaining those standards, so building a bit of a long-term culture of pitch maintenance beyond the funding, and then we can have a bit of a chat around, you know, maximising the resources like pitch power and support from the GMA and the Football Foundation. So yeah, just a quick slide on a reminder of what the criteria is for the grass pitch maintenance programme. So your pitch power, complete that annually. A lot of you probably would have remembered when you first signed up that they were twice a year. They are now moving to once a year. So that will be on an annual basis. I don't know, have we had a time scale, Julian, on when that will be from effect from, or?
So in terms of it being a terms and conditions requirement of the grants, they're moving to once a year, and I think that the original timeline was October, but that's probably slid close to the end of the year now. We'll still have 3 inspection windows. In that sense, pitch power doesn't change. People are still welcome to do it up to 3 times a year if they would like. But in terms of what is required for to kind of draw down your funding, they're moving to once a year. So that'll be grantees should, and I say should, get notification from the Football Foundation when those T's and C's change. But I expect it'll probably be November, December time now.
Thank you. And then in terms of training, so 2 people within your club or organisation are to complete the GMA online level 1 football grounds maintenance course. And then just a reminder of what eligible works you can claim for with your funding. It can only be used for enhanced maintenance work, so that is such as slitting, scarification, decompactation, selective herbicide treatment, fertiliser overseeding and top dressing. Does anyone have any questions on that before I move on? Right, thank you.
Becky, could I just ask, will we be able to see a copy of these slides after?
Yes, yes, I can send you a slide copy. Yeah, no problem. And then just to move on a bit of an example funding model. So this will obviously vary depending on how many pitches you've got on your site, the sizes of pitches, and obviously what they were originally rated as when you did that first pitch power inspection. But just as a basis, a single 11v11 pitch rated as poor it's £3,200 per year. You can view your exact funding breakdown on your Football Foundation account. So there should be on your dashboard area when you click into the grant an offer letter that you can download, and within that would be something that's similar to what looks like on the screen for your sites specifically. The grant is obviously over 6 years, over a 6-year period, but the terms and conditions of the grant, monitoring information, so that's your pitch power, must be submitted for a minimum of 10 years following the date of the offer letter, the date that is on the grant offer letter. And then, yeah, just to recap of what the claims process is, I appreciate most of you have probably done at least 2 claims now, maybe 3, but just to kind of run through what that looks like. So the timing of claims, grant recipients should aim to submit a claim between 12 to 18 months after their previous claim has been paid and once their pitch power inspection has been completed. So for example, if claim 1 was submitted on the 1st of September 2024 and the money was paid by the Football Foundation on the 1st of October 2024, claim 2 should then be submitted on or after the 1st of October 2025. Evidence requirements. So from the second claim onwards, grant recipients must provide proof of total expenditure for works completed using the previous year's grants funding. So for example, for claim 2, the claim should include invoices for works completed after the 1st of October 2024. In terms of compliance, so all the works must align with what's recommended in your pitch power report and obviously fall within the list of eligible items. Once you've submitted that claim, the payment timeline, depending on if all the documentation that's been submitted is correct and verified, that the claim is aimed to be paid within 28 days. And then for grant recipients that are on year 3 and beyond, you must start to include your partnership funding within contributions within the submitted evidence spend. So obviously for year 1 and 2, they're fully 100% funded, and year 3 is when it starts to taper down. So I think the best thing to kind of bear in mind when you are coming to your claims is that total project cost. So if I go back to this slide here, so your TPC across the 6 years stays the same. It's 3,200, for example, on the one pitch site with 11v11. Every claim should aim to hit that amount in full, regardless of if you've only been given £1,067 in partnership funding. You would still need to evidence that £3,200 has been spent on that pitch, as an example. Does anyone have any questions on that?
It's probably worthwhile. It's probably worthwhile just stressing the point, Vicky. You have got up to 18 months to spend the kind of year-to-year funding now, and so obviously a big topic around tonight is kind of sustainability beyond the grant funds, and obviously one of the potential ways, if we think that self-funding or sustaining beyond year 6 is going to be a challenge, that you could effectively draw it out to 18 months between each grant period. So one of the things to potentially think about, but hopefully that makes sense to everybody, because we understand that the grant claim process can be a bit of a little bit of a minefield. And the other one that I get asked a little bit as well is that the grant portal email and sign in will not necessarily be the same as the pitch power one. So just bear that in mind if you've not logged on for a little while, that they're not one and the same system. So you can't log into pitch power and view your claims. It's a separate system.
Fab, thank you. So the next part is just to go through the Football Foundation portal. So as Julian alluded to, that you will have access. You'll have 2 separate accounts basically for this process. You'll have your pitch power account, and then you'll have your Football Foundation account. Your Football Foundation account looks like this screenshot on, I don't know if it's your left or right, but the one with the green welcome and the 2 images at the bottom. So that's what you should see when you're logging into your Football Foundation account. Now, the Football Foundation updated their platform that they do accounts on. Just 2 seconds, my dogs have come into the room. I'm just going to shut them out. Yeah.
I've got mine scratching at the door, so that might probably break in a minute.
I must not have shut the door properly. They've just helped themselves in. Apologies for that. So yeah, so I think it was it January or December time, Julian, that they did an update on the platform.
Yeah, it was back end of last year.
Yes.
Around the verification processes.
Yeah, so they updated their but kind of like the platform that they host the account on now. So if you haven't logged in since, I want to say, December last year, you would probably have to go through this process that I'm just going to run through now. So basically you just need to re-register your account, and that can be done by going to the sign-in page and then the sign up now at the bottom. And basically it will just ask you to put in your email address that you've previously used, and then it will send you a verification code. Once you've received that verification code you need from your email, you need to add that onto this next screen where it says number 4 and verify that code, and that will then re-register your account basically. Hopefully there'll be no kind of issues in terms of being able to access your grants, etc. But if there is, just give me a shout and I can kind of support with that process. Just the other thing just to note is obviously if an applicant is from a football club, then claims can only be submitted by a chairperson, secretary or treasurer. I think that was different. I think it used to be able to do a vice chair, I think it was, but both primary and secondary contacts do need to hold the chairperson, secretary or treasurer roles. So yes, so the last stage of that is once you've had your verification code, you'll have to reset your password, and then once you've done that, you'll be able to log in as normal. I'll send, like I say, you'll have these screenshots, and I do have a PDF document which goes through those steps if you ever need help in doing that. So yeah, does anyone have any questions on that part? Okay, so then how to make a claim. I just thought it'd be useful just to go through this just in case anyone's not done it for a little while or just need a little bit of a refresher. So once you have logged into your account, you should be able to see a list of your projects. It's like a green and white grid, and you can filter these by according to the stage of the project's at. So if you've got an application that hasn't been submitted yet, that'll show as application not submitted. If you have got a project like the grass pitch maintenance fund, that will show under manage your claims. But yeah, so you would find your relevant project. So in this case, it would be a grass pitch maintenance fund. You'd go to the green arrow and then select continue. After clicking continue, it will take you through to your project overview. From there, you would click the green button at the bottom of the page. It says proceed to project documents. Once you go to the next page, it will give you another green button. It's at the top of the page this time just to throw you off, and that will then say proceed to claim. So you'd click onto that. Once you've accessed your claims, you'll have a list of previous claims that you'd submitted, or ones that are, you know, in pending, for example, to edit, etc. So you can either view them from there, or if you want to start a new claim, there'll be a button saying begin new claim at the top. So you just select that. And then once you've started that process, it's in two stages. The first part is you would have to select the bank account. So this should already be set up from previously. You'll have a bank account registered on the system. If not, you'll need to add that. But yeah, I can help with that if that's the case. It's just quite a simple process. You just have to add it onto your profile. So yeah, so that's the first part. You'd have to select a bank account from the drop down, and then select who your secondary contact will be for the grant as well. And then the second part is uploading your bank statements and invoices. So you'd have to upload a bank statement dated within 3 months. And there's a I don't know if you can quite see it on the screen, but there's a it'll say choose file. It says require you to upload a bank statement and a choose file button. So you would just select that and then select the relevant document for that. And then there's also a similar area where you would have to upload your invoices. Again, you just choose file and then select whichever ones are relevant for this claim. On this part as well, I think it's not included. There's like where it says add invoice, you would select that button and it'll open another pop out, and that's where you would input the details of the invoice. So it will ask for things like invoice number, who the supplier was, the amount of the invoice. I think it'll ask for VAT, and it will ask for the date of the invoice. So you'd add that in. save it once it's done, and then you would upload the corresponding invoice in that box at the bottom. Once you've done that, you'd have to do an individual what's the word I'm looking for? You'd have to do like an individual document for each invoice, and you'd have to keep adding the invoices individually, inputting all the data. So once you've done all of that, and you've kind of met your total project costs, that's when the claim is ready to submit. And it would have to be that the primary contact would submit and sign first, and then it would go to the secondary contact to sign and submit as well. Has anyone recently done that process, or is it still something that's to be done?
To be done in Brockton's case.
Okay, no problem. I was going to say, I'm more than happy to help you with that, Nigel. It's not a problem.
Thank you.
It's all right. So yeah, so that's the first bit done. Does anyone have any questions? No. Just share in a second. Just get Julian's slides up. Bear with me a moment. Button. Sorry, everyone, wrong button. Just press there. Share. There we go. Sorry, everyone. I'll hand over to Julian now. This bit. Can you all see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Over to you, Julian.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. But, my earbuds have just disconnected. I've been having issues with
Yeah.
them. Yeah, so I'm just the purpose of this evening really, I ran the first session of kind of this type earlier in the summer, and we've kind of fairly understandably been asked on a regular basis over the last few years whether there was likely to be kind of further grass pitch funding to maintain pitches beyond year 6, and I think we can probably say, certainly for the time being, with some reasonable confidence, that there isn't. We had we had hoped and made the case with the Football Foundation for probably 18 months or so that we would we'd initially hope for kind of a sustained level of funding to kind of tick pitches over, but credit to the FA and the foundation, they've been pretty transparent all the way through and have said that their absolute kind of strategic focus and priority over the next 3 to 5 years is to kind of keep up with the demand of the women and girls game, which means investing more heavily into 3G pitches to facilitate that. So grass pitch funding is still available for new applicants. It's not a cut in that sense, but we kind of now at least have some clarity for current grass pitch maintenance funding recipients that sort of post year 6 there isn't further funding available. at the moment. So this session, from my perspective, sort of very much focuses on how we can prioritise spends, what we can look at to support organisations kind of pre and beyond year 6. Next slide, please, Vicky. So hopefully you're all familiar with the Grounds Management Association. We promote and protect the interests of professionals and volunteers in the grounds management profession. We own and operate Europe's biggest grounds management show, Saltex, that's coming up at the NEC on the 12th and 13th of November. Parking is now free, which those that have attended before will be happy to know. We also run an awareness campaign called Grounds Week that sees international and national press celebrating the grounds industry. And we also have our industry awards. And I don't know if any of you have been nominated before, but we do have categories around community sport and volunteering. So that's worth keeping an eye out for as well. Next slide, please, Vic. Quick introduction to the program that I work within. So again, apologies if you've seen this before, you may well have done. So the Pitch Advisory Service is the program that is delivered by the Grounds Management Association, but funded by Sport England and the Football Foundation. And I've also got colleagues that work within Cricket, Rugby League and Rugby Union. Hopefully you're all relatively familiar with my role, but we provide either remote support through Pitch Power, on-site visits, guidance around machinery selection, reviewing specifications, quotes, etc., assisting with making best use of the funding. Training and education is obviously a big underpinning part of what we do at the GMA. And we also kind of signpost and support around projects that may be required outside of the sort of the typical grass pitch funding or machinery funding, where we're looking at drainage projects, pitch construction projects, etc. Next slide, please, Vicky. We are a membership organisation, so I'm not going to sort of go in great detail because Vicky will circulate the slides, but you can see some of the benefits of GMA membership there. Next slide, please, Vicky. Yeah, and just building on what I said about the consultancy element, that might make a little bit more sense after my presentation. We do have the Turf Care Advisory Service department of the Grounds Management Association, which kind of sits separate to the Pitch Advisory Service, which is those of you that may have looked into capital projects with the Football Foundation, such as irrigation systems, drainage, pitch levelling works. They require a greater level of investigation and expertise than kind of the pitch maintenance, pitch renovation side. So we also have a small team of consultants that work within the Grounds Management Association to support those projects, and that sort of consultancy work is a prerequisite of Football Foundation capital funding where grass pitches are concerned. Next slide, please, Vicky. So how to achieve and keep a good pitch. As I said, the focus of tonight is hopefully the majority of you will have all good and above pitches or some good pitches. I really want to sort of focus on what to be aware of, what makes a good pitch. Next slide, please, Vicky. Yeah, so what does good mean in terms of pitch power, but also as a kind of a player experience, an experience of a grounds person. The role of regular maintenance in keeping a good pitch, guideline hours of pitch usage. Often a question that gets asked of us is how many hours a week should our pitches be being used? What can they cope with? Considering rotation of areas of pitches, particularly when we're talking about training, warm-ups, etc. how we can use portable goals to facilitate that and kind of ease wear in certain areas. When we're kind of looking more around focusing resources, what we can do around problem areas on pitches, how not to waste money, making use of the right equipment, being consistent in the maintenance that we do, and supporting people within our club to value pitches and understand the role that a good pitch has in a successful football club or organisation facilitating grassroots football. Next slide, please, Vicky. So understanding good grading in pitch power. So one of the questions that we sometimes get asked for pitches that have potentially missed the mark a little bit on achieving a good pitch within pitch power is what makes a good pitch. So pitch power is a grass pitch inspection tool. It was introduced in 2020 as a way of expanding the support that the regional pitch advisors could provide. So those of you that have been involved for a good while will know that sort of pre-COVID, the role of the regional pitch advisor was to work through expression of interest forms for a visit with the county FA, organise site visits for every expression of interest, go out and do the inspections, provide a written report, kind of do that whole joined up piece, which was a fantastic level of support for those sites that we could get to, but it did mean that the capacity was somewhat limited. So we were maybe able to kind of, in a busy year, get round 100, 110 sites or so across our regions. When we moved to pitch power, that's obviously significantly accelerated that in terms of the people that we can get advice to. So it's really there to initially inspect and monitor pitch quality and try and get a good level of advice out to people up to 3 times a year. So pitch power does have 3 inspection windows, so July to October, November to March, and April to June. And the grading criteria, so what constitutes a poor, basic, good, advanced or high pitch, changes dependent on the time of year. So as we move into the winter, the parameters are a little bit more lenient. So for instance, grass coverage, we don't expect to have as good grass coverage during the winter, so the parameters are a little bit more lenient. At this time of year, we expect grass coverage to be at its best. So we need 75% or more surface cover to reach a good pitch at this time of year. It's a little bit like a major fail in a driving test. If your grass coverage doesn't reach the minimum amount that you need it to at a given time of year, you cannot get to a good pitch. So what that means in terms of pitch power is that good grass coverage and limiting weed coverage are the priorities, because if, for instance, we have over 25% weeds and 75% grass coverage, we might have no bare ground at all, but that will mean that we can't achieve a good pitch if our grass coverage is too high. In terms of when to do your pitch powers, obviously Vicky's outlined that from a terms and conditions perspective, you'll only need to do it once a year. The way that is changing slightly is that the previous requirement was to have a mandatory inspection carried out between November and March. It's now going to be at any point within the previous 12 months from your last claim. However, we probably anticipate that most people will do it within a few weeks of their grant anniversary date. So in time we'll probably get consistency in terms of when they're submitted, but just in terms of continuity of data and trying to sort of track your pitch quality over time, try and do it at the same time year on year, or if you're doing it multiple times, again, try and keep that consistent. From my perspective as an advisor, what I like to see is kind of one done at the start of the season, so we can see how good your pitch quality is at the beginning, and then another one done kind of midwinter, January, February time, so we can see what effect weather and wear has had on your pitch quality and whether there are any kind of underlying issues such as drainage that might be causing that decline in quality. So from an advisor's perspective, that would be the best case scenario. And lastly, kind of where to pitch power, because this is another thing that can cause some challenges, is if, for instance, your entire pitch is great, but you've got 2 bare goal areas because it's December, January time and you've just had a lot of wear in your goal mouths, they aren't necessarily a fair reflection of the overall quality of the pitch. So whilst we want users to kind of focus on the heavier traffic areas of pitches, we normally say to try and pick on an area that is the average fair reflection. So if you're in a 6-yard box, for instance, it might be between the edge of the goal area and the 6-yard line, or between the goal area and the penalty spot, for instance. So just finding an area that's a fair reflection of that kind of particular point on the pitch. Is that all clear? Any questions on that? Sorry, Ashley, can't hear you, mate. I don't know where the mic's not.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, just a quick one. If you do multiple pitch power reports, are they, obviously when you go for your funding, are they going to look at both of them, or will they just look at the latest one?
I mean, in terms of them scrutinising your reports, all they will want to see is that you've provided one within the last 12 months. So that from a grant management officer's perspective, all they want to see is that you've satisfied your T's and C's in providing an inspection within 12 months. They won't scrutinise kind of the detail of the report. That's kind of my role. There's no impact on pitch quality in terms of whether they would pay the grant out or not. There is a separate department that's been created called the Support and Impact Team at the Football Foundation, whose wider role it is alongside the County FAs and myself to support struggling sites, but that wouldn't be the role of the grant management team, who would be kind of looking at your claim.
Yeah, and also just quick one, like if we'd gone for a separate grant, say on our earlier one, you said, right, ideally you need this piece of equipment,
Yeah.
and then on the later one you said ideally we need this piece of equipment now,
Yeah.
and you went for the first bit of equipment later on, would you still be able to get that? You just need to upload that first report.
So what? So normally what I try and do when I am completing follow-up reports or a site that's been providing reports for a while, is to look at what was previously recommended, and also when you do your pitch powers, it's kind of one of the reasons why we ask you to update it. You should be prompted to update your maintenance and equipment section. So that enables me to see, right, since I wrote that report, they've now got this piece of equipment. But I generally will be fairly consistent in recommending the same items of machinery up until somebody has purchased them, and even then, if they have purchased them and I leave it in, it's not doing any harm other than making me look a bit silly. So the only thing that we need to do in terms of updating reports is if someone's done one, say 9 months ago, and it doesn't contain the machinery that you're wanting to apply for, I have to do a bit of a manual process in updating that report, submitting it to the Football Foundation and getting their data team to kind of manually update that on the grant management system, which can be a bit leggy, but it is a way of getting around you having to kind of do a whole fresh inspection. Appreciate those of you that got big multi-pitch sites, it can be a bit onerous to do it more often than is required. So there's normally ways of working around it, but yeah, in a fairly roundabout way. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no worries, thanks.
Right, next slide then, please, Vic. So regular maintenance. So what what we find quite clearly is that the sites that maintain and are responsible for their own pitches and do the maintenance themselves, alongside having a third party come in and do that more enhanced maintenance, are always the ones that are quickest to improve. So it's not to say that sites that sort of subcontract their regular maintenance don't get to the good standard. They absolutely do. It can sometimes take them a little bit longer to get there. But what I sort of wanted to stress is how fundamental kind of the basic nuts and bolts of pitch maintenance are to achieving and sustaining a good pitch. So we're talking about regular repairs to goal areas. So making sure that they're level, making sure that we sustain grass coverage in those areas for as long as we can. Obviously, mowing is absolutely fundamental. Mowing at the right heights, mowing as regularly as we're able, mowing hopefully in the appropriate conditions. And your pitch power report should kind of outline what that looks like. Surface grooming, so those of you that have got access to a quadruplay or equivalent, making use of that and kind of understanding what implements to use and when, and how they sort of complement each other. Surface aerations, another important one. So if you've got, I know a lot of sites in Staffordshire have had kind of the multi-tiner funded. If you've got one of those, or you've got a slitter, for instance, making use of those at the right time of year can help to promote pitch quality as well, particularly as we get into kind of the autumn and early winter. And, you know, generally speaking, and it is a generalisation, you can't kind of rely alone on that sort of renovation work that the specialist contractor will do purely to sustain your good pitch. You know, we do occasionally get sites where perhaps they're spending the money that they should, they're having the work done that they should, but maybe they're only mowing every fortnight and they're marking their lines and they're not doing a great deal else. We can sometimes find that if the kind of the regular maintenance isn't quite being done as often as it should, or in the right way, or with the right equipment, sometimes pitches can suffer and struggle to maintain that good standard. Next slide, please, Vicky. Anybody, any questions, just do interrupt me as we go through. In terms of guideline hours of play, and the reason why this is important is that we want coaches, players, treasurers, chair people, whatever it might be, grounds people, it's normally an easy sell. They kind of understand it. But what we also, you know, if we get a club contact a chairman and say, oh, we'd like to ground share, or we'd like to train on your pitches, or we'd like to do tournaments on your pitches, or whatever it might be, we want users to have a reasonable understanding of kind of the carrying capacity, we call it, of a football pitch, and what it can reasonably be expected to cope with, allowing for the maintenance that we're doing and the work that we're already doing to our pitches. So generally speaking, we say the natural grass pitch, an undrained natural grass soil-based pitch, should be able to cope with about 4 hours of adult play a week, without deteriorating too much. Obviously, there's lots of variables to this, weather conditions when play takes place, types of soils, etc. But that is the kind of general rule of thumb, that a good quality grass pitch, undrained, should be able to sustain 4 hours of adult play a week. That includes pre-match warm-ups, whatever it might be. So if we basically think, you know, 2 matches essentially. We usually find that as the junior age groups kind of get smaller, that you can use the pitches more, 6 hours for kind of youth age groups, and sort of perhaps more than that once we move down to mini soccer. And obviously there will be also times a year, kind of peak growing season, summer months, when pitches should be able to kind of sustain more play, and they would do certainly during the winter. If your pitch has drainage, or if you're thinking about drainage for your pitches, generally drain pitches can sustain more use. But if you are well over these hours that we're sort of talking about, it's obviously having honest conversations about what is a reasonable expectation in terms of the quality of the pitch, or maybe considering whether the maintenance and investment into that pitch needs to increase. So, for instance, we have had some occurrences during the programme where grantees are now facilitating maybe twice as much football as they did before, even 3 times as much, and actually their pitch quality has stayed at basic. It's not got any worse, but it's not got any better with the funding. And in real terms, that is actually, potentially should be classed as an improvement, because that pitch is able to sustain twice as much play whilst maintaining the same quality. So that's something to be considered as well. Next page, please, Vicky. So rotation of areas, worthwhile mentioning purely because those of you that have training on your pitches, certainly in my experience, the coaches and players tend to migrate to boxes, centre of pitches, wherever the goals might be. And it's even worthwhile thinking about it with pre-match warm-ups and things like that. You have essentially got, if you divide your pitch into quarters, you can see there with kind of the grid system that I've sort of crudely come up with, that you've got various zones on your pitch that if they are rotated through a calendar month, effectively you've only got maybe a warm-up happening in one area of that pitch a week, and it's kind of, or a month rather, rather than the same areas of pitches being sort of hammered for warm-ups or training sort of week in, week out. So an obvious one, for instance, would be trying to do high intensity drills off the pitch or down the wings. If coaches are sort of doing small-sided games as a training session, sort of looking at whether you could play across a pitch, or again using kind of the pitching quadrants. And a little bit of this is kind of trying to give you a slide to use where you could sort of relatively easily explain to players and coaches the benefit of doing this, and ultimately keeping a good pitch is for their benefit as much as grounds people. We want to be able to sort of say, yeah, we've got nice pitches, but actually the people that benefit from having nice pitches are the players. So everybody within the club kind of needs to buy into it in order to have the best pitches possible. Next slide, please, Vicky. And sort of tying into that use of portable goals. So again, my limited clip art skills are sort of showing you a few locations on the pitch there where if you've got portable goals, it can make a real difference to pre-match warm-up. So for instance, not moving goals out to the side when doing shooting drills before a game, moving goals either outside the 18-yard box or across the pitch when we're doing small-sided games or set pieces, whatever it might be. So really just trying to focus on limiting the use of those really high traffic areas to matches essentially. Obviously, socketed goals encourage repeated play in the same areas. So quite often on the sites that I go to that are potentially local authority or public open spaces where we've got socketed goals, the goal areas are quite often in a fairly poor state, and that might be through unofficial usage, which can generally be reduced if we try and make use of portable goalposts. And obviously they can be kind of removed from a pitch and secured together using chains or secured to fencing if you've got that as an option. And I'm sure all of you are hopefully aware that there are grants available for goalposts. Any questions on those last couple of slides before we crack on? No, good stuff. So focusing on problem areas on pitches. So kind of following the same theme here. we can see sort of from the diagram that I've done at the bottom that we've got kind of a yellow zone through the 6-yard box to 6-yard box where we would expect the absolute heaviest traffic to be on a football pitch. And then we've kind of got the orange zones a little bit outside of that where again there may be a reasonable amount of wear. And then kind of outside of that, the wings, in my experience, generally kind of take care of themselves in recovery, providing kind of weeds are kept under control. So with us moving into a situation where clubs funding is tapering down or clubs are moving off the grant funding altogether, it's thinking about when we're carrying out our reseeding works, are potentially needing it for sand dressing, whether we need to be doing the whole pitch or whether we can be focusing on kind of those high wear areas of pitches. So, you know, to give you an example, kind of the width of an 18-yard box end to end is 4,000 square meters. A whole pitch is anywhere between kind of 6,400 and 7,000 square meters in terms of a full-size pitch. So straight away there's a potential to reduce the amount of materials that you need to use if you're only focusing on kind of the problematic areas of pitches. So, you know, trying to maximize budgets to focus on those without us seeing a particular decline in pitch quality. In terms of that picture at the top of that goal mouth, really trying to kind of avoid that scenario. So are we sand dressing our goal mouths on a regular basis? Are we forking them? Are we overseeding them regularly enough whilst temperatures that might allow for some grass seed germination? We really want to try and avoid a scenario where we're getting dished goal mouths, because then what can happen is we have to address that before we can then get the contractor in with their disc seeder or whatever it might be to kind of repair that goal area. So even if you can't keep any grass coverage there, still really, really valuable to kind of fork and sand dress that goal area to keep it level and keep it free draining. The last thing that we want is kind of cancel. I'm sure you've all come across pitches that have been called off purely because there's standing water in a goal area and the rest of the pitch might be absolutely fine. Something that is hopefully fairly avoidable with the right maintenance. Next slide, please, Vicky. So don't waste money. Vicky sort of said, you know, try and use your pitch power report to influence the areas that you sort of prioritize in terms of spends. Those of you that are responsible for kind of selecting your own fertilizers, or even those of you that are using contractors to do that, have you ever had a soil analysis, for instance, of your pitches done, so you actually have an idea of what fertilizer your pitches might require, what nutrients your soils might be either rich of or need more of, and that does play an important role in sustaining a good quality pitch and giving the grass plant what it needs to be healthy. Inexpensive, fairly simple to organise, and again, it's one of those things that if we're trying to maximise our budgets, knowing that we are spending money on fertiliser that is doing what we want it to do, rather than giving too much or too little of what our pitch needs. Sand dressing is one. When I was kind of covering Essex and other areas, there are a few contractors down there that love nothing more than spending 60 tons of sand on pitches every year. Sand dressing is now extremely expensive. Doing a whole pitch, as we spoke about, is probably a not required luxury on a grassroots pitch. So it you know, thinking about what we're trying to achieve through sand dressing, it won't make a fundamental difference to a poorly draining pitch. So if your pitch consistently drains badly and you have standing water on it year on year, that is probably telling us that there is an underlying issue with the drainage of that pitch. So either your soils are very clayey, you could have a high water table, compacted layers, thatch issues, whatever it might be, plonking sand on it year on year is not going to change that. It might mean that the pitch surface firms up a little bit more. It might mean that the water moves from the top of the pitch to the clay soils underneath a little bit quicker. But ultimately, once those soils are saturated, having your pitch sand dressed isn't going to make a fundamental difference to the drainage. What sand dressing will do is it will firm it up if your pitch gets a bit sloppy and a bit squelchy. It will help out to even out bobbly ground. So what I saw a little bit of towards the end of last season was perhaps pitches that hadn't been forked or divoted very well prior to the kind of real dry weather kicking in. And we had kind of clay soils that had potentially kind of dried quite uneven and quite bobbly from play at the end of the season. And that's the sort of scenario where sand dressing would help to even that out. One of the main benefits, particularly now that options are quite limited in terms of worm control, is that ameliorating your topsoil with sand can help to make it easier to disperse worm casts. And because the kind of the sandy topsoil sits a little bit drier, it does kind of anecdotally reduce worm casting prevalence. So that's another good reason to kind of do it. But to ameliorate, probably, for instance, say the top 5 centimeters of your topsoil to sand, you could probably expect that to take anywhere between 6 and 10 years if you're putting on a significant amount of sand dressing year in, year out. So it is a long, gradual, expensive process to do that. So I'm not saying don't sand dress, but be very clear on what your expectations are of it and what you're hoping to achieve when you do it. Any questions on that before we move on? No, good. Move on to the next slide then, please. Okay. Using the right equipment. So the reason I wanted to spend a short amount of time talking about this is that we are now getting to a point with certain grantees where you've got a good amount of experience in sort of using pitch maintenance equipment, maintaining your own pitches, and you might be in a situation where you think, well, actually, if we ordered the materials ourselves and did some of this renovation work ourselves, we could save ourselves a few quid on contractor labour, and again maximise the budget that we've got in doing some of this work ourselves. So we are getting into situations now where grantees are looking at their own disc seeders, their own sand spreaders in some scenarios, their own fertilizer spreaders, and if a site is big enough and it's justifiable from a return on investment perspective, we will even consider vertidrains or other deep spikers or indeed shockwave earthquakes as well. So it's where the you're thinking kind of with a view post year 6, well, actually, could we do any of these tasks ourselves if we had the appropriate equipment? And obviously being aware that the Football Foundation grant funding will allow you to apply for up to £50,000, 75% of the total machinery cost. So effectively you could be year in year applying for that money. So if you, for instance, were to do a bit of a long-term plan and said, well, by year 10 we'd like to have our own disc seeder, our own sand dresser, etc., you could kind of say, okay, well, this year we're going to go for this item of machinery, the following year we're going to go for this one, the following year we're going to go for this one. So these are the sorts of conversations that we're starting to have with some clubs now where they feel like they could take on. Disc seeding is a good example where it's relatively straightforward and could be taken as an in-house operation for some clubs. with the right equipment. And also we've got the stuff that we regularly fund: compact tractors, roller mowers, grooming tools, and again, sort of having to think about have your organisation's got all the equipment that you need to sustain your good quality pitch. Last but not least, for those of you with bigger sites who might struggle to keep up with just the mowing of your sites, we are increasingly seeing robotic mowers used across football clubs now. So for instance, if you have a slitter and a quadruplay, but you struggle to use it because you spend all your time sat on a mower, if you've got a secure site and it's something that you think you might be interested in, the Football Foundation are now funding robotic mowers that I work quite closely with them on. So if anybody thought that could be of interest, then give me a shout and I can sort of chat you through what some of the technology involves and what it looks like. But it's not as alien as it might sound, and can free up valuable time for volunteers to kind of focus on doing some of the other pitch maintenance tasks that we recommend. Next slide, please, Vicky. So yeah, I think this is sort of the last but one. It's just trying to be consistent in the work that you're doing. So a really sort of relatively basic package of enhanced maintenance work that hopefully your grant funding will sort of cover off, certainly in the early days, is just trying to keep on top of weed coverage through tasks like scarification, surface grooming, etc. Disseeding worn grounds, an appropriate number of applications of fertilizer if you're using a slow release that can sort of last 3 or 4 months, and hopefully not needing to apply that more than maybe twice a year. Doing some form of decompaction spring and autumn, so trying to do that twice a year. It might be a verti drain or a deep spike in the spring and a linear decompaction shockwave earthquake in the autumn, and sort of only spraying for weeds if you need to. What we try and encourage now is kind of responsible practice, and this is where pitch power can be quite helpful, is monitoring how much weed you have in your pitches and what is a acceptable tolerance of weeds. So rather than just kind of de facto spraying selective herbicide year on year as a matter of course, is actually thinking, well, we want to keep our weed percentage below 10%. We're going to try and scarify and surface groom and do all of our mechanical practices as much as possible to keep it below 10%. And only if it goes over that 10% threshold do we then look at getting somebody to spray selective herbicide. So this is kind of becoming industry best practice now in agriculture and sports turf in terms of trying to limit the use of chemicals where we can. And last but not least, carrying out those localized repairs that I spoke about in the previous slides. Next slide, please, Vicky. This bit, and for those grounds people on the call, I'll be preaching to converted, is very much about trying to sell to your organisations the value of good quality grass pitches. Pretty much every time the FA survey players, improving pitch quality is number 1 or number 2 on the wish list, and it's always in the top 5 reasons as to why players drop out of the game, because pitch quality isn't good enough. We know that good quality pitches attract and retain players. I go to increasing in the last 12 months. I've been going to clubs within the step system, sort of 4, 5, and 6, and a number of those that are not paying players or not paying them a great deal of money are saying that they have good players and do well because they can promise a good playing surface. Obviously, fewer postponements and cancellations mean less frustrated players, parents, and coaches. There's kind of nothing worse than that Sunday morning phone call of the game's off or whatever it might be. A big one for those that kind of might be in charge of money is thinking about trying to start to build a picture of what impact cancelled training sessions or postponing matches or cancelling matches even has on secondary spend. So if you are selling teas, coffees, bacon sarnies, whatever it might be, do you know how much money you're losing when you're not able to play the game or host a training session? Because that can sometimes be an interesting one for people when they start to add up those numbers versus what it would cost to invest reasonably into their grass pitch. How much would a poor pitch cost your organisation? And certainly from my perspective, pitch quality is the number one priority. If there is no grass pitch, you cannot play football. A cheaper tracksuit or a more budget trophy for presentation night has no impact on participation whatsoever, but a poor pitch definitely does. And then kind of last or not least, kind of you being all aware that if we feel like pitch maintenance has only taken us as so far, is that there is the potential for capital investment through the Football Foundation in terms of drainage, watering systems, potentially levelling work. So, you know, for those of you that have been in the programme a good amount of time and can kind of demonstrate that you've done all the maintenance things that we've been asking you to do, but you've still got problem areas on pitches, or you've got pitches that are performing poorly in relation to others, it is an option on the table. As ever, the Football Foundation kind of don't fund anything at 100%. So obviously the partnership contribution elements are an important factor when we get into kind of capital projects, and then it usually involves Vicky and colleagues at the Football Foundation to kind of scrutinise projects more closely and give you more support where capital investment might be required. And you know, we're looking at football outcomes and kind of what is the value of that investment versus the football outcomes that we're going to get. So it's not as easy as kind of the maintenance or equipment bit, but something again that might be worth thinking about for those of you that are planning for the kind of medium to long term. I think, Vicky, that's me done. If we move on to, there we go. So have we got any questions sort of off the back of that?
Julian, I'd like to ask Vicky a question if there's nobody wanting to question yourself.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's not limited to me.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. It goes back to the pitch power tapering.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting a understanding of that, Vicky. I'm pretty certain that our 6 years is up, so therefore we're in the taper period.
Yeah.
Could you just remind me of the taper figures? So there's the one figure, 3,000 and odd pounds work to be done on the grassroots pitch.
Yeah.
But then only a certain percentage of that would be given. And was that about £900?
Yeah. So basically, year 1 and 2 are 100% funded. And then year 3 and 4, it tapers down to 67%. So I think the figure was exact figure for a one pitch 11v11 is, I think it was 1,097 for year 3 and 4. Year 5 and 6 is then your amount drops down to 33%, which is then, I can give you the figure for that. So sorry. So your grant for year 3 and 4 would be 2,133. for year 3 and 4, that's at your 67% funded, and then year 5 and 6 would be 33% funded, and that would be £1,067 for 11v11 pitch, a one 11v11 pitch.
And so, and after that, basically the funding has ended.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So, okay, right. Yeah. I think that was the question, really, the main question.
Yeah. That's fine. I've got just a couple more slides before we finish off, just around kind of, I guess, the sustainability part of after the fund. So let me just pull those up. So yeah, these next couple of slides are just really just to kind of give you some pointers to maybe consider, especially if you are now starting to move further through the fund, and as the grant kind of starts to taper down. I guess, yeah, just to kind of plant the seed around starting to have those conversations within the club, and yeah, starting to maybe consider putting like a bit of a plan together. So first of all, I just wanted to give a bit of an overview of what the grass pitch programme and the current impact in Staffordshire. So we have, I think it's 772 active pitches in Staffordshire, and 512 of those have been inspected and are on pitch power. Out of those 512, 264 of the pitches are rated good and above. So that's about a 52%. 52% of the grass pitches that have been inspected on pitch power are good or above. So we're definitely seeing some improvement, and obviously we want to continue to build on that, but obviously we also need to make sure that we're maintaining it. And quite a few, Staffordshire was one of the kind of county FAs that did a lot of this work at the start when the grass pitch maintenance fund was kind of launched. So we have got quite a few sites and clubs that are in a similar position to yourself, Nigel, at Brockton, that are starting to come towards those last couple of years of the fund. So yeah, so we need to kind of now start to support you guys in hopefully sustaining this picture, but also we need to kind of improve it as well, and improve it as we go along and get those numbers up.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, just a quick slide on why culture change matters. So obviously funding is temporary. You know, sustainability is long term. The funding has been great, but as I say, it can't continue after 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. It just can't. So we do need to start looking at how we can become more sustainable for a longer term. Club culture influences how resources are valued and maintained, and everyone has a role to play, from committee to volunteers to the players. So yeah, creating a culture of financial sustainability. So a lot of you probably have already started to consider this, but just kind of to summarise it, some things that you can start to think about, have conversations about. Diversifying the income, so around subs, sponsorships, events, fundraising, maximising that secondary spend that Julian touched upon in his slides, so teas, coffees, snacks. That obviously then equals a bit of a regular income. For those of you that don't potentially have facilities on site or a provision to generate any income, there is now a catering unit fund from the Football Foundation. So again, like everything else, it's up to, I think it's up to £50,000, 75% funded. So similar to the machinery and equipment. Again, this can be for sites that are quite big, and they probably do have where the car park has a clubhouse, but potentially could do with something the other side of the site for ease. So yeah, so that's just something else to consider for those of you that maybe want to expand that provision, but also don't have it already. Prioritising the pitch maintenance in annual budgets. So when you are doing those, just making sure that pitch maintenance costs are considered and prioritised. Looking at creating a bit of a reserve fund for future maintenance, so starting to build that up in the bank. And then also being transparent and sharing with players and parents how pitch maintenance is funded and the benefits of that. There's quite a few of you that I can think of that have brought the pitches from a poor or basic standard up to good, even, you know, advanced and high. You guys need to be shouting about that, you know, because that's great work that you've done, and you know the funding that you've had has helped to achieve that. So yeah, it's about being transparent on that front. And then the other thing is to kind of just put out there and give an example of, I don't know if any of you have thought about it or started to have conversations with players or clubs, is as a bit of an example, maintaining a good 11v11 pitch costs £3,200 per year. If it's used by 2 teams, say, so 30 players, that would be £9 per player per month. Have you asked the question, have you floated the idea to the players and parents whether they'd be willing to pay that to play on a good quality surface? An alternative approach is, you know, seeing if you could secure sponsorship to cover the cost of it. You know, promoting the benefits of a good pitch and showing how the sponsorship can directly support player experience and safety. Maybe something to consider. I mean, we've kind of looked at, you know, do we start giving you guys some sort of plaque to shout about that you have got good and above pitches and that you're consistently sustaining that quality. You know, if there is any kind of help that you need around potentially putting a proposal together to go to sponsors to present to sponsors around sponsorship, that's something that we you know we can help with from a county FA point of view. So yes, it's just trying to give you a bit of food for thought, I guess, of things that you could potentially consider in terms of the financial sustainability. And then the next part, I think Julian has already kind of gone through this, but could your club start taking more control of the pitch maintenance? You know, start with the essentials around the tractor, mower, quadruplayer, but then over time expanding the equipment. Julian's already gone through this, but that could be another way to kind of help yourselves become a bit financially sustainable in the future. And then just my last slide is around just obviously action planning. So what can you do next, I guess, is to start identifying which cultural shifts you think you could do and focus on over the next few seasons, setting clear goals and obviously assigning responsibilities, and then reviewing that regularly and adapting as needed. I mean, I'm more than happy to kind of help and support with that. You know, if you want to sit down and do a bit of an action plan with me, I'm sure Julian would help as well in terms of maintenance plans. We've obviously got a lot of support from Andy Jackson at head of grounds at Stoke City. So you know, if there is a bit of like, if you need a bit of support around that work, around putting a bit of an action plan together for the next few years in terms of financial sustainability, you know, around your machinery, you know, what you want to look at potentially purchasing over the next few years, we're happy to do that. And I guess the last thing kind of to finish on was, has anyone started thinking about this? Have you started having any kind of conversations within your clubs around cultural change and things like that? Is anyone brave enough?
I think, Vicky, one of the big thing is getting the volunteers to do it. There's where we are at Trubshire, there's literally just 2 of us, that's it.
Yeah.
And we do all the cutting, all the marking, all the slitting, all the seeding. We do a lot, and there's just 2 of us, that's it. And to get somebody else to help out is like pulling teeth.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's, you know, something that I could potentially, we could have a conversation around, Ashley, is how do we try and get you a little bit more help in terms of that. You know, that's definitely something that we can support with as a county FA as well.
Yeah, I think sorry, Ashley, I think one thing one thing that I tried to do at my club, because I was sort of as well as doing it professionally before I moved up the ranks, I sort of was a volunteer for 10 years and sort of did it all on my own. One of the things that I kind of realised over time is that if you go to somebody and say, "Oh, can you help me on the ground?" It's going to be like 15 hours a week, and they're like, "Absolutely not a chance." But if you go to them and say, "I need somebody to do this task for an hour or two," and you break the tasks down into little jobs, suddenly somebody might say, "Well, actually, I could maybe do an hour or two. I'd probably give an hour or two." So it's trying to think about if there are any sort of tasks, for instance, like goal area repairs, where you could just have an individual walking around with a wheelbarrow with some materials in and just sort of repairing goal areas, or divoting a pitch, or keeping some lines in, or doing something that doesn't necessarily kind of require the experience or training that you've had around the machinery. It's just sort of trying to break the pitch maintenance down into sort of bite-sized chunks, because you've got a much better chance of sort of getting a volunteer to give an hour or two a week than saying more generically, "Does anybody want to help on the ground?" Because then they're thinking about this huge site with all these pitches and the big picture and thinking, "Oh my God, I don't want to get too involved in that." So there's I think it's been renamed, but Sport England used to have a good resource called Club Matters that sort of had lots of resources around recruiting volunteers, and sort of the best way to go about it. And we know that it's harder than ever to kind of get people to volunteer. But you might just find somebody that works in an office all week and quite fancies an hour or two in the fresh air, or even doing something like we've spoken about, like the action planning, or the raising money for sponsorship, or something like that. I'm a treasurer, I've been a secretary, I've been a chairman, and it's often I'm put on the same people to do multiple different hats. And again, something that I've tried to do with parents and players is sort of target people with the skill sets that I don't have to do a better, quicker job. I've managed to get an accountant, for instance, tell me with the treasurer skills now, and the things that she's able to do with Excel macros and get different systems talking to each other has probably done what would take me 4 hours in about half an hour. So, even just little things like that can make a big difference. So.
Yeah, no. Well, what we're having to at the meet is my teenage son. He comes down and pushes a push-along lawnmower around on the banks and does all the robot marking for us. So yeah, it's just hard finding that help. Nobody wants to do it anymore.
Does anyone else have any questions or want to chat to me or Julian about? No.
Just a quick one, Julian. In regards to us specifically, obviously, we pretty much do everything except verti draining, and it's come to the point of to spend the pitch power money doing. We are putting some sand down on some of our more used pitches, but obviously, it's because we do so much now. We're having to put sand down, obviously, to spend the money to improve the pitches. And obviously, you mentioned about putting the sand down and not really having that much effect on the grounds. Obviously, what else is that we could do within the pitch power money? Because I think that hinders some sites. Because obviously, to spend that pitch power money, you can't use like volunteer hours. You've got to get a contractor in to do the work. So as we're all progressing, it's going to be harder from when we're getting to that top off to spend that money.
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the reason why I touched on the one thing that you can do with the pitch power money is buy materials. So if you were doing the work yourselves and not paying a contractor, you could spend all of your money on more grass seed, more fertilizer, more sand, and that's where sort of having that equipment to do things like, disc seed, for instance. Having a proper disc seeder makes a drastic difference to germination rates and all the rest of it, and isn't a massively expensive piece of equipment compared to some. In terms of spending the money, I mean, it's really around prioritization. So, we'd look at your pitch power report. We'd say, right, we've got any areas that have sort of been highlighted as an area for us to focus on. Do we need to put more grass seed down? Actually, although my main focus with the sand dressing is to say to people, don't prioritize it above the areas that have been highlighted as a priority. So, if you got loads of weeds, don't spend a load of money on sport sand. If you got poor grass coverage, don't spend a load of money on sport sand. It's 50 quid, 50, 60 quid a ton now, at least. If you've got to do 60 tons on a full size pitch, there's pretty much your £3,000 gone, your 3,200 quid gone just on sand. So that's fine. If you've got a good or advanced rated pitch and you're thinking, actually, we could really improve the playability and the evenness of the surface if we put some sand down, happy days. What I don't want people to do is to be sold the dream by a contractor that it's going to resolve their drainage issues overnight, because it isn't. So it's very much around, as with any maintenance tasks, it's why are we doing it? What are we trying to achieve by doing it? And is it the right thing for us to be doing? Sand dressing can be, we want to put 60 tons down and leave it all on the top as part of renovations because we want to sort of really even the bobbles out, or it can be, actually, we want to sort of try and get some sand into some verti-draining holes because we want to sort of improve the drainage of the surface or firm up the surface, in which case you might need to put 100 tons down and brush it into the hole. So again, it's having a clear idea of kind of exactly what problem you're trying to improve when you're doing any task, really. It's sort of the first thing you should ask yourself.
Yeah, ours is mainly for aeration because where we've got some of our pitches, obviously the car park, it's over 2 levels. The car park is a bit of a runoff from the top field, and then the car park runs off onto another pitch. So obviously after we've verti-drained, we've spread the sand, and we've done 60 tons over 2 seasons now on this one pitch, and it's helped. It's helped it an awful lot.
But I mean, it could be, that could be a good example where actually a small grant for a interceptor drain to run between that car park and the pitch would be not something you can use your grass pitch maintenance funding for, but it could be something for you to consider in terms of trying to limit that runoff rather than hoping that sand's going to do the job.
Yeah,
just little things like that.
Yeah, we have put a French drain on one side of the fence and ran it down into another French drain that we'd done at the side. So that's worked as well.
Yeah. Look at that for a beauty of a cat. I'm not a cat person, but that's a cracker.
What's his name? He, she, Chris?
It's Tiggy.
Tiggy.
He's pumped out a little mooch in my desk as he does. Probably wants more food. Just on the speaker there, the chap who was looking after Trubshire Cross, I watched my grandson play there a couple of times last season. They've done a great job there. So credit to you there.
Thanks for that. Yeah, there's only 2 of us at the minute down there, so yeah, it's we do try our best.
It's much, as a spectator, it's much improved. So well done for you.
Thanks.
The car park there. Who has the revenue from that? Do you get it?
That goes back into the site. That does go back into the pitches as well. Yeah.
Cost.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, you asked Vicky if anybody has done what I've spoken about. Well, because I looked after our cricket ground as a volunteer for 10 years, took no money at all. When I had to step away from it, we had to pay over £7,000 a year for a contractor to look after it because nobody had put their hand up and do it. And it meant that our membership we started a ground fees scheme where members were paying a fixed amount every month, like a direct debit, to pay for the work to be done. So, either people at clubs need to put their hands up and volunteer or put their hands in their pocket in some circumstances. I mean, I think football and probably boxing are guilty of charging the same playing subs that they were 20 years ago. I talked to some football clubs and still sort of charging £3 for a game, and you just like, this is bonkers. Like, I think I paid £50 a month to do karate. It's like, football's probably, and we obviously don't want to be putting any barriers up to participation. It is kind of the original sort of working class sport, but every area has been affected by inflation and increasing costs. So it is an honest conversation that people need to be having with themselves about, if we haven't put costs up in 5 to 10 years, like, we need to be seriously having to think about it. So, and some of the bigger junior football clubs, we did the maths with one of the other county FAs, and they had to basically charge all of their members an extra £2 a month to pay for the grass pitches. It was they had so many teams and so many members, like the increase was minimal. So it's just really thinking about doing some of those maths. The sums might not work out, and there might be other things that we need to consider. But like you were saying, Ashley, we are funding robotics now. Robotic mowers aren't going to be suitable everywhere. GPS line markers aren't going to be available everywhere. But the last thing in the world that I or Vicky want is a club disappearing or teams disappearing because there's nobody to look after the grass pitches. It is obviously a massive concern. So whatever avenues we can look at to limit the risk of that, succession planning, whatever it might be. No point burying your head in the sand, because one day the volunteer will step away or retire, and clubs can find themselves with a hefty bill for a contractor, or worse, not able to maintain their pitches at all.
Yeah. Right, if no one's got any more questions, we can let you all go. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you very much, Vicky. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Julian.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks
See you
for
soon.
See
Bye.
ya.
Bye-bye.
Take care.